Seamonster, the story. Thank you very much for inviting me along tonight, Chiara, for this special 2019 World Childless Week live streaming of Seamonster, the story. We are here in the Blue Star streaming studio in Glasgow, and the World Childless Week focus for today, Saturday, is We Are Worthy. We'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. Seamonster, the story, is a solo performance that has become a melodic and lyrical vehicle for Chiara to explore her own journey through grief, denial, and isolation. This journey materialised when she realised she wouldn't achieve her dream of motherhood, but did allow her to find her current positive life perspective. This production honestly depicts the different emotional stages that Chiara experienced, and which we hear are mirrored by so many others who never thought they would be childless either. So tonight we want to give you the chance to listen and share in her mesmerising musical journey. After the set, we will take questions about Seamonster, the story, for Chiara to answer. You can ask about any aspect, as Chiara is willing to honestly discuss her emotional journey, her love of music, and how they both came together for this creative project. If you want to ask a question, all you have to do is use the comment box on the YouTube page to pose them, and we will come back to them after tonight's performance. Please do remember, though, that this session is being recorded, so we won't mention your names when referring to your questions for reasons of confidentiality and sensitivity. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce Chiara Berardelli.
My children would be free range. Tousled hair you can ruffle. Messy clothes. We do loads of stuff. Explore by the river. Root about looking at bugs and leaves. We'd go and see films. We'd play music, dance. I'd want them to be themselves. It wasn't like that for me. I remember I went camping with a friend to the west coast, Ardnamurchan. I remember we pitched a tent near a huge oak tree overlooking the sea. I remember I was 28. I remember I started bleeding on Saturday night, and by Sunday I knew I was miscarrying. We hadn't planned the baby. We hadn't long been back together. I didn't have a fixed job. He was about to give up his to become a full-time student. I was taking new medication, and I was really worried about what it might do to the baby. He said it was up to me. So, Catholic upbringing and all, I arranged to have a termination. The night I got back from the camping trip was the night before I was due to go into hospital. I wasn't alone when I miscarried, but it was one of the loneliest experiences of my life. We bumbled along a few more years. We never really talked about the miscarriage. I tried to forgive myself for not wanting the baby. Everyone I knew seemed to be getting married, so we set the date. Then 5 weeks before, I called it off, because I knew we were just crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. I was 31, and I was sure the right man would come along. Everything was going to be fine. It's a tale of free-floating love. Love that has wings, but no home to speak of. And it flies high above buildings in search of the light. Been growing since I was born. And stories I heard, pictures I've drawn. No wonder It's heavy and precious as gold. Love with no name, yet as real as I'm standing here, waiting for a place to land. I blame my dad for everything. To give you an idea of what he's like, I once asked my mum how she stood being married to him. And she said, well, Chiara, at least he's not an alcoholic. She's Italian, and she does talk like that. He was a traditional patriarch. Nothing was ever good enough for him. I remember when I was about 8, I got 9 out of 10 for a spelling test. And all he could say was, you should have got 10. You have to come top. I was terrified of him. I think we all were. I knew from the age of 12 that I wanted to be a songwriter. My ambition was to win Eurovision. Bit late for that now. When I was about 15, my dad asked me what I wanted to do when I left school. And I said, music. And he said, don't be ridiculous. Music will never pay. He was right about some things. Keep it as a hobby and go and do something better with your results, like medicine or law. So I became a doctor. And for a long time, I thought I was fine with that because I was used to the idea of not getting what I wanted. Loving by numbers, that's how it felt. Pieces of paper you kissed as though heaven sent. The thoughts in my head you never once wanted to know. I guess you'd say the same for me, but you were the grown-up in this show. And you left me stranded out on the road. Is it any wonder nowhere feels like home? And so am I like you, all miles apart. You think with your head whilst breaking my heart. It's all about arriving and how high you can go. But I'll take the journey, no matter how slow. And you left me stranded out on the road. Is it any wonder nowhere feels like home? And you left me stranded out on the road. Is it any wonder nowhere feels like home? several soul-destroying years of internet dating later. And it's the morning of my 40th birthday. In my dreams, my 40th birthday would be breakfast in bed, brought to me by my 4 adorable, affectionate children, and my caring, attractive, sensitive, but not too sensitive, husband. Wouldn't really matter what we did the rest of that day, just be together. I don't remember waking up. I don't think I got dressed for a long time, and I don't remember who phoned, but I remember standing in the hall on the phone, crying my eyes out. All I could think of was I had no partner, no children, and not even a job I wanted to do. I'd failed at the game of life. And today, at 40, it was all over. I sobbed and sobbed until I went out for dinner that night with friends. I thought about doing it on my own. But what I really wanted was a family, a partner who would be kind to me and the children, like my father hadn't been, to be part of that unit, my own family. I didn't give up hope. Onward with the internet dating. But I did decide to do what I'd always wanted and concentrate on my music. When I was about 42, an amazing thing happened. Up until then, whenever I'd seen young children, I felt a really strong physical pull inside me. And suddenly, it was gone. It was as if I didn't know it was there until it wasn't. It was such a relief. Maybe now I could just get on with things. When I was 44, I met a man. Things were going well. He had 2 children, aged 12 and 10. I remember he asked me quite early on if I'd wanted to have children. And I said, yeah, I wanted to have children, but the time was past. I was fine about that. He said he thought it was a shame it hadn't worked out for me, but he definitely didn't want any more. A few months in, and they were going on holiday in their camper van to France, and he asked me if I wanted to come along. I wasn't sure. It seemed a bit soon. I hadn't spent a lot of time with the boys. But then I thought, why not? Something about that trip, the 4 of us together, like a family, being mistaken for their mother by people we met on the campsite, and slowly realizing how much I wanted to be their mother. But I was used to not getting what I wanted, so I'd be fine. Except this time, I couldn't ignore it. Woke up one morning, truth was in my eyes, bright and blinding, even a fool would realize. Over my shoulder, the dream has gone. I can't see it, but I can't touch it. I want it so bad. First a whisper, and it became a shout, sucking up the oxygen, drowning all the color out. Over my shoulder, the dream has gone. I can't see it, but I can't touch it. I want it so bad. I want it so bad. And from the deep, the sea monster's rising. It stirs in me all the buried longing in my heart, my heart. over my shoulder. When it's gone, it's gone. I can't see it, but I can't touch it. I want it so bad. I can see it, but I can't touch it. I want it so bad. I want it so bad. I want it so bad. I was stuck. All I could think of was, what if? What if we'd met 10 years earlier? These could be my children, our children, over and over. He didn't understand. I mean, I get it. He'd been through a difficult divorce. He just wanted an uncomplicated relationship. But I was stuck. We were driving back from a weekend up north with my folks. I was crying all the way down the road, as usual. We stopped to pick up my car. I was supposed to go back to his, but I couldn't face it. I wasn't getting any support from him. That night, I got a troubleshooting email. He was in IT. For the next 2 weeks, I did everything I could to get over it, so I could be fine and we could carry on our relationship. I really didn't want to be single again. Recently, I'd Googled coming to terms with childlessness, and I'd come across Gateway Women, an online support group that seemed to be for women going through a similar experience to mine. I'd been really reluctant to join. That meant facing reality. But I signed up and I started posting. I bought the only 2 books I could find on the subject. Never to Be a Mother, written by a social worker in the 90s who couldn't find any literature on the subject, so she wrote her own book. And Beyond Childlessness, written by 2 women, one who couldn't have children and the other whose partner changed their mind about wanting them. I even signed up to a weekend workshop for women struggling with childlessness. I was doing my very best to be fine. Would you take my hand, 'cause the seas are rough? Would you kiss my head, show me love's enough? Please don't look at me like I'm from another planet. I don't choose to feel this way. I never said my pain was the worst. But it's on my chest like a load of lead. Please don't look at me like I'm from another planet. Don't you think if I could fix it, I'd have done it? Who gave you the right to choose the view of me you'd rather see? So please don't look at me like I'm from another planet. Don't you think if I could fix it? Oh no. No, don't look at me like I'm from another planet. Don't you think if I could fix it, I'd have done it. I was feeling better. Being proactive was helping. So he came round to my flat and I said, I'm feeling better. I'm doing all these things to get over it. And he said, good, okay, let's give it another go. As long as you stay okay. And I went, yeah, okay. A week later, I couldn't get that phrase out of my head. I knew I wasn't okay. I was thinking it was going to take a while. And I couldn't do it with this guy. He had no space for me to be sad. So, a year and a half in, another failed relationship. The breakup jolted me into the present, and that meant facing reality. I was 45, single, and it was very unlikely that I'd have children of my own. Some days, being single is fine. You're free, independent, no one to answer to. But some days, it was a lovely sunny day in the park, and all I could see were couples, smiling, laughing, being together. There are days I only see hands holding, eyes locking, skin touching, lips kissing. On those days, all I can be is head down, hands in pockets, heart heavy, feet dragging. We'll all meet lonely sometime in our lives. What would it take not to run, not to hide? We'll all meet lonely sometime in our lives. I want to greet it with my heart open wide. Wait for those days I rise above. I've been in free-flowing, peace-loving, all-knowing, no box ticking, pigeonholing, dream-making, boundary-shaking days, 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 dream-making days. I wish for in life. It was a cold weekend in November, and I was on the train to Edinburgh for the Healing for Women Facing Fertility Losses weekend. I was feeling apprehensive. A friend had suggested it might make me feel worse, but I was pretty sure I couldn't feel any worse. The first thing the counsellor asked us to do was draw a timeline of how we came to this point of being childless. When we'd finished, she asked us to share it with the group if we felt able. Everyone hesitated. So I went first. Get it over with. I can't remember if I got upset, but I know I was as brief as possible. Then one by one, the others told their stories, each one unique, each one resonating with mine. I couldn't stop the tears. At first, I thought I was crying for them. Then I realised I was crying for myself, for my story, my non-story. For the first time, I let myself feel it, really feel it. There was no denying it anymore. It turns out I wasn't fine not getting what I wanted. Life was pointless. There was no meaning. I didn't want to kill myself, but what was my future if I couldn't be a mother? She's a robot out in space, been sleeping for 2 whole years, resting her metal, conserving energy for what lies ahead. Deep space hibernation. That's the name. Deep space hibernation. Nursing the flame. Fire in my soul has been burning so low, I'm leaking like a sieve. There's no joy in me, no love to give. Deep space hibernation is what I need. Deep space hibernation sounds good to me. It's not that I want life to stop. It's more I'd like to get off. Maybe if I buy some time, I'll get back my peace of mind. Today is the day they wake her up, and cautiously they wait to see her fly, chasing comets across night skies. I went to a yoga retreat that New Year, mostly because I didn't know what else to do with myself. Couldn't face partying, couldn't face family. I thought to myself, what bunch of weirdos would spend New Year doing yoga, meditation, and drinking herbal tea? Turns out, a very nice bunch of weirdos. And I left feeling much more positive for the new year. I even forgave my dad during a meditation. It didn't last. But I did start the new year vaguely optimistically. A few weeks later, I was listening to a radio interview with Sheryl Crow. She was talking about how, after she split from Lance Armstrong, she got breast cancer. And after treatment, she thought to herself, well, I don't get to have the family I always wanted. And then she thought, well, why not? I could do it on my own. So in her 40s, she adopted 2 young boys. Of course, it wasn't the first time I'd thought about adoption, but something about her story made me think maybe I could do it on my own. I'm strong enough. The first step was a home visit with Bernardo's. They asked me a lot about my support structures, but I signed up to the introductory weekend anyway. Friday morning, I walked in, and the first thing I realised was I was the only person on their own. All the rest were in couples. At first, that really bothered me. It was the fact that they had someone to talk it over with when they went home that night. But by day 2, I was fine. I was in health professional mode. So they laid it all down. All the potential horrors that children in care can go through. What it can do to them, to their sense of self, their sense of security, their adaptive behaviours. I came away feeling pretty overwhelmed and with no idea how I felt about it all. So I made the most grown-up decision I think I've ever made. I decided to sit with it and see what my inner wisdom came up with. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But they don't say how long you have to wait. And what's the point of growing all those muscles when the one you really need's about to break? And all the while the wheels of life keep turning. And I don't want to be one to complain, but it's taking all my strength to just keep swimming. This one goes out to those who feel the same. Can't go over, can't go under, can't get round it, no. The only way is through. So while you're traveling, won't you show yourself a little kindness? Be your own best friend. Your own best friend. Do 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 do. La da da dum dum da da dum dum da da dum. La da 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 dum da dum. Dum 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 dum. Do 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 dum dum da da dum. Can't go over, can't go under, can't get round it, no. The only way is through. So while you're traveling, won't you show yourself a little kindness? Be your own best friend. Your own best friend. They say the grass is greener, like it isn't. And I'd love the chance to lie down in your field, but I had all I can bear of staring over there. I water my own grass till it grows. Water my own grass till it grows. I'll be my own best friend. I didn't know I could grieve for something I never had. But especially as I didn't even have the story of trying for a baby, but I was grieving. The Gateway Women online support group started out as a blog by Jodie Day, a woman in her 40s who was struggling to come to terms with not having the family she'd always wanted. She was attending a course on grief as part of a psychotherapy training when she realised that's what she was going through. Women all over the world responded to the blog, going through a similar experience with nowhere to share it. The hardest thing was being around parents and their children. I remember standing around the trampoline in my brother's garden, my siblings and their partners looking on as my nieces and nephews jumped up and down, and it felt like knives in my chest. The people I worked with in the GP practice were great, thank goodness, because I was in tears a lot of the time, even in between patients, especially the pregnant ones or the cute, chatty kids that normally I loved seeing. They just sort of let me cry. They didn't try and fix it or minimize it or change the subject. They seemed to understand way more than I did, that I just had to feel it. But talking about it was so hard. I felt hot cheeks of shame whenever I tried. Shame at what? I'm not sure. Failure? The taboo of grief? Sometimes friends and family members, they couldn't even look me in the eye when I tried to talk about it. "Why don't you freeze your eggs?" said one. Freeze my eggs at 45? "You could have one of mine." Children, that is. "Okay, I'll have the cute one with the straight teeth." "Well, you called off your wedding. You obviously didn't want children." "Thanks, Dad." Even my mum said the Gateway Women were wallowing in it. Sometimes the forum was the only place where I could be heard without being shut down or misunderstood or pitied. I had lines carved on my heart, words on my lips, no place to say them, of arms aching to hold a child on my hips. And you knew, you gave me sanctuary. You gave me sanctuary. The water was rising. I was quiet, silenced by shame, out in the cold, nose pressed to the glass, watching their lives, the story unfold. And you knew, you gave me sanctuary. You gave me sanctuary. The water was rising. I have found a place to rewrite the story with grace. You gave me sanctuary. You gave me sanctuary. You gave me sanctuary. The water was rising. The water was rising. The water was rising. Three weeks later, I got a phone call from the social worker at Bernardo's. She said that the way I'd interacted over the weekend showed I had a good understanding of what was involved, and she was happy to put me forward to the next stage. What did I think? I'd been coming to the conclusion that I didn't want to do it, not on my own. I wanted a partner to share it with. Plus, I'd have to give up the GP job I actually liked for one in the city, closer to home I'd probably hate. And forget the journey I'd already embarked on with music. There'd be no time for that. I was thinking what I really needed to do was grieve for the family I didn't have in my 30s and live the rest of my life as fully as I could, not adopt on my own in my late 40s and possibly regret it or do it badly. But despite all of that, I said, yes, put me up for the next bit. I slept soundly that night, and in the cold light of day, I phoned her back and said, at least for the moment, it was a no from me. A few weeks later, and I remember this really clearly, I was standing in the kitchen in my flat making dinner when I suddenly realised I felt peaceful. Just standing in the kitchen making dinner. I hadn't felt like that for about 2 years. Maybe there could be a future. There was a time when I would do most anything to change the air I breathed and every choice, every left and right and sweet goodnight I whispered haunted me like a player in a casino game. I was bargaining with fate, a little drunk, a little late, but the mist is clearing now, and I think I see the way, and it's leading somewhere new, and that's okay. I leave behind the things I didn't know I wouldn't need along the way, and traveling light. I can run and chase the sun depending on the day. Sometimes I take a look behind just to see how far I've come, and I'm not the only one. and the mist is clearing now, and I think I see the way, and it's leading somewhere new, and that's okay. But I still get lost sometimes when the light is dim. The branches brush my face and I hear the fear within. Yeah, I still get lost sometimes. Then the mist is clearing, and I think I see the way, and it's leading somewhere new. Yeah, the mist is clearing now, and I think I see the way. It's the road to somewhere new. That's okay, that's okay. So for a few months, I thought I was fine. Better. I thought I was over it. It was spring when grief pulled me back down again. I couldn't believe it. I was so angry, so frustrated. What was wrong with me? Why was I sad again? When was this ever going to go away? But that's not how grief works, the Gateway Women said. It's not like going from A to B. It's more snakes and ladders. You're moving along, getting closer to the end, and then one day, whee, splat. You're right back down near the start again. But it passes. It rarely hurts as bad as it did when you're in the thick of it, and joy comes back. I learnt to go easy on myself. If I couldn't face my one-year-old niece's christening, I didn't go. Why put yourself through that? She'd never remember. And it would have sent me right back down a snake. I managed to forgive myself for the choices I'd made along the way that I believed had led me to be a single woman in her late 40s with no children. But the thing the positive thinking gurus don't tell you is we're not in control of all the outcomes of our lives. There are far too many variables. You can make all the decisions you think are right at the time and still end up with a result you didn't want. But I do know that pretending to yourself you're fine when you're not will come back to bite you on the bum. We're not young, we're not old, and the rest is waiting. We hold on, we let go, and slowly, slowly we grow. And I see the storm rolling over, and here in the sun I believe the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. And here in the sun, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. I'd like to welcome back Heather Whiffen.
Chiara, that was truly beautiful.
Thank you.
I would just like to remind anyone watching that if you want to submit questions, please do type them into the comment box and we'll have a look at them as we go. We've got one to start us off though, haven't we, Chiara?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, Seamonster, the album, came out in March 2018. I first saw Seamonster, the story, in March 2019 at the Glad Cafe here in Glasgow. What was the catalyst to bravely share this narrative of your experience through your music?
When I recorded the album, after I released the album, and I started playing the songs, I had it in my head that I would do a little bit of explanation, not like I'd done with previous songs. And when it came to it, it felt just a very difficult thing to say on stage. I had one song, I had Sanctuary, that I would, because I dedicated that song to the Gateway Women, so I would say that, and I'd say this is what the album was about. But I felt like I wanted to say more. I wanted to explain the process, and because when I made the album, I did do it chronologically, and so I felt like I wanted to say more than that. And then I met Rachel, that I collaborated with, and I didn't know when I first started speaking to her whether it would be something I'd write for someone else or someone else would perform it, or what the format that it would take. And this was the result.
Well, we're really glad you did, and I think the narrative between the songs is just lovely, and it just really clarifies for people the emotions, etc., that you were feeling. In the songs Another Planet and Deep Space Hibernation, which is my favourite.
It's everybody's favourite.
Oh, is it really? You express the feelings of being misunderstood and withdrawing emotionally to conserve energy. Now, within childless communities, many mention shame and the need to withdraw from usual social circles, etc. Can you expand on your experience of that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think when I first started experiencing it, it wasn't something that was discussed out in the open. And actually, in my late 30s, when my friends were having children, and I started to kind of have that feeling of, oh dear, it's not going to happen, or I couldn't even find the words to express it, and I didn't want pity, so I just kind of said nothing. Once I think, being able to express it, then at least you can acknowledge it to yourself. The song Deep Space Hibernation, that I heard a thing on the radio about the Rosetta mission, which was put to sleep for 2 years in space before it landed on the comet. And at the time I was feeling really bad. And I just thought, wow, that would be amazing to go to sleep for 2 years. Because I knew from what other people had said further down the line that eventually I would feel okay again and life would have meaning again, but at the time I just wasn't feeling that. So it was this kind of desire just to take yourself off and just join things again when you felt like doing it.
It's that time to just make meaning for yourself and accept it yourself before you're ready to brave the world, isn't it, really? Yeah,
and I also, probably a bit after that, I started to be able to decide if I didn't want to go to certain things, like what you were saying, which until you've acknowledged it to yourself, you can't do that. And each of those occasions just makes you feel so much worse.
Yeah, you feel guilty.
Yeah. And eventually, as you start to feel better, you can decide which of them you can handle on that day, and it gets easier. But I felt like I needed permission of other people who'd been through it already to say, it's okay, you don't need to go to the christening or whatever it is.
Chiara, we've found your story uplifting and really positive. So let's end on that really positive message tonight. Pick one line from your song, The Best Is Yet to Come, that we can all take away tonight to hold on to. That's quite a question, isn't it? One line from one of your songs.
I'm trying to think of the words. I think probably the slowly we grow. I wanted to write that song very much as a kind of, there's hope for the future, and certainly my experience is that you go through a hard time, you learn about yourself, you learn different coping mechanisms. I learned to at least try to be more self-compassionate. That was something I learned through this experience, which I kind of didn't realise I didn't do. So that, it's the fact that you can, through everything, you can grow, and that if I look at it that way, it helps.
And I think most of us are really hard on ourselves, aren't we? So.
Yeah, and at hard times you find that out.
Okay, it's not a question, but we have a really nice message, which is well wishes, enjoying the show, from somebody that you know. Thank you so much for sharing.
Does that say Norway?
Does it say Norway?
From Norway. Wow.
Shall we ask? It does.
Hello, Norway.
From Norway. You always wanted to win the Eurovision, didn't you? Here you go.
Where is it next year? No, I'm trying to think who won this last year. It wasn't Norway.
Well,
I'm trying to think if I know someone in Norway. I can't think of anyone in Norway.
But it's lovely to know that the message is, being heard in different... And that's one of the beauties of doing live streaming, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
The geographical barriers are taken down.
Yeah,
Lovely. Now, before we leave you, please remember that you can donate for this event tonight on Chiara's Facebook page, and that will help to support this lovely event that we've all enjoyed tonight. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Lovely.